Hi there, and a very warm welcome to Season 6, Episode 15 of People Soup. It's Ross McIntosh here.
It's so easy to get caught up in your head when you're just alone and going over these problems that you've got or going over these thoughts over and over again, instead of just getting them out there into the world, talking to a colleague, talking to a friend, talking to someone in your family. I'm worried about this. I'm not sure what to do here. This happened. What do I do? Actually talking about it. Weeks and weeks have gone by in my life where I just kept things to myself and I didn't share it with anyone. And I look back and think, how much could I have minimised or completely eliminated the suffering I was going through by just saying, look, this was going on, because I'm sure they would have given me some advice. Get out of that relationship. Get out of that school.
Pea Soupers, in this episode I continue my conversation with Sam Hart. Sam is many things. He's a podcast host, a primary school teacher, a serious sports enthusiast, an entrepreneur, and a proud Brummie, that is, someone from the City of Birmingham in the UK. Sam's People Soup ingredients are openness, reflection, and exploration, with a side order of flexibility. You'll hear us talk about our worries about what other people think about us, and how that overthinking can leave us feeling quite low and withdrawn. In our conversation, we try to normalise the experience, and Sam shares a range of practical strategies to help us relate to this type of self-doubt in a different way. Sam also shares 2 takeaways from his own experience and also 3 insights he's gained from his guests on the Insight podcast. It's a real treasure trove of tips. For those of you who are new to People Soup, welcome. It's great to have you here. We aim to provide you with the ingredients for a better work life, from behavioural science and beyond. For those of you who are regular Pea Soupers, thanks for tuning in again. We love it that you're part of our community. A quick scoot over to the news desk. I have some new offerings in 2025. My small group supervision programme, for those of you using ACT in the workplace, has launched, and Cohort 1 starts in March. There are still a couple of places left if you're interested, and you'll find the link to all the details in the show notes. I'm also planning an open course, where I deliver the training protocol I developed with Dr. Paul Flaxman to people who are interested in navigating their working lives more effectively, considering what matters and what might be getting in the way in terms of being the person they'd really like to be. More news on that soon. So let's crack on. For now, get a brew on and have a listen to the second part of my chat with Sam Hart. Sam, when we were planning for you coming on the podcast, we identified a skill we both have, and we thought, wouldn't it be lovely to have an episode where we talk about worrying what other people think of us? Because it's something that we are both quite good at doing. You mentioned in part 1 how you can, what I would call catastrophize. Would you call it catastrophizing?
I would, or ruminate as well. Just ruminating as well over, yeah. Maybe it's not completely a catastrophic thought, but it is just enough of a niggle. But then when you keep going over that niggle, it's like a death by 1,000 cuts, isn't it? It's just like a little thing that just keeps at you.
So we thought we'd do our second part on this topic. Sam, why is this important to you to share this?
I think partly because I know how much it has held me back, or how much it has just made the experience of my day-to-day years kind of not be as enjoyable as they could have been. You know the days or the events or the meetings or whatever, or the training that you've delivered, whatever it is, where you felt more relaxed and you felt more yourself and it was fun. And then you also know the same situations where you were worrying constantly. You worried in the build up to it, you worried during it, and then you walked away worrying about it. And the same things have happened in both instances, but your experience of them was completely different. It's like a little microcosm of life, isn't it? Like we're going through all these things, all these experiences, all these, the highs and lows. And it's all about how we decide to experience it and like what we've put in place to, measure and analyse or whatever these experiences. And so for one reason, it's important because I know the effect it's had on me, but also the effect that it's having on so many people as well. it's just another one of those things that's more common than perhaps we realise. It's one of those things that feels so isolating because we think, I'm the only person that feels like this before a meeting or before delivering training or, after I walk away from a family meal or whatever. And it's only when you start talking to people that you realise, no, other people are going through this as well. Because we think everyone else is really confident, don't we? So many people are good at putting on a mask of confidence and proficiency. And I think maybe it takes a bit of maturity, and it comes with age, where you realise that person actually isn't as confident as I thought they were. And actually they've got a lot going on in their own lives. And actually this has happened to them or whatever, And there's so much going on underneath the surface that we don't realise. And so it feels like a good thing to talk about. Like we've got more in common, and also it's something that we can dissect a little bit, and it will mean that our experiences will just be that much more, joyful, richer.
And I said in the first part of our chat, I really value the way you share your experiences, because I think not enough men do talk about their own sort of internal experiences. And I absolutely agree, because I know that more people worry about what other people think about them than we might imagine. So part of our attempt in this part 2 is to normalise that a bit more. And people might be surprised to hear you and me talking like this. Because in our professions, we stand up, or we host podcasts, we stand up before groups of human beings and share things with them, skills, educate them, help them learn. And yet when people hear us saying we have these doubts and these worries and these ruminations and anxieties, they might be surprised.
Yeah. I can't remember which comedian said it, but it's something like in an interview they were asked, are you nervous when you go on stage? And they replied, of course I'm nervous. I'm nervous every time. And if I wasn't, then I'd stop doing it, because then it wouldn't be of any, if I wasn't nervous, it means that I've just kind of, there's no joy or reward coming out of it. We get nervous and we get caught up in our own head, and we worry about what people think, often because we're trying to do something of value, or we're trying to, help them or turn up for them, or, do the right thing. And so we're worrying about what people think because we don't want to, let them down or look like we're stupid or say the wrong thing or whatever. And I guess that's only happening because you are putting yourself out there. So it's like, it's just part of it, isn't it? It's part of being on social media. It's part of being a podcast host. And it's funny because that's exactly what I was going to mention, like scenarios where this happens for me. Yeah, when I press share on an episode or on a post or something where I've been a bit vulnerable, and I think, was that too much? Did I share too much? Is that embarrassing? What are my mates going to say? How are people going to take this? And it's hard because it's a balance, because sometimes you do go too far. Sometimes you do share the wrong thing, say the wrong thing and make a mistake. But that's all part of it as well, isn't it? And how do we get better, or how do we learn without putting things out there, making a mistake or whatever it is?
It's kind of like the route to mastery, if there is such a thing, involves putting yourself out there, as you say, and also making mistakes.
Yeah.
If we are moving towards things that matter to us, then that anxiety or that worry is a sort of indicator that you're on the right track. People often think if people are doing stuff that matters to them, it just comes easy. It just flows out of them. They're just amazing at doing this from birth, kind of thing. When actually, in probably the vast majority of cases, it's taken years of practice and experience.
Exactly.
And practice and experience applies to us relating to those thoughts around worrying what others think about us too. Can you remember how long you've had these sorts of thoughts?
I think from very early on, because I think it links to kind of that social anxiety that we mentioned. I can remember from a very young age, pre-university, teenage years, being really nervous when the focus was on me. If there's a group and people start asking about, what I've been doing, or, some achievement or something, I can remember going bright red and sweating. I still go bright red when in certain situations. It's just really strange, but in certain situations I can go bright red and get really nervous, and it's like I don't know, just some switch has been turned on where it's like, oh, just everything gets fired up, and it can be so excruciatingly embarrassing. And I'm trying to get more of a hang on it, trying to like understand why that is. Partly I worry, I think the dialogue that's going in my head is, don't sound like a show off, don't sound like a show off, don't sound like a show off, don't sound arrogant, don't sound arrogant. And so I've always had this thing about don't put yourself out there, don't kind of oversell yourself, like stay in your lane, don't be too confident. It's bizarre, isn't it? It's just bizarre, because there are so many people that don't have that affliction. There's countries of people. I'm, thinking about people in America that just don't have that. Of course, I'm talking in a very broad generalization here, but it feels like there's more of a culture of kind of like celebrating your wins and being enthusiastic. Whereas, I don't know, there's something inside of me that's, don't get too cocky. Don't think this is all going to work out, because something's going to go wrong.
Yeah. That sounds so familiar. Were you shy as a child?
I think so, yeah. I think I was mainly shy, but maybe with friends, kind of groups of friends, I was like the opposite of shy. It's like I was making up for lost times in enjoying being the centre of attention when it was kind of close friends that I knew, or maybe with kind of a bit of drink in my system, a bit of alcohol in my system, then I wouldn't mind being kind of loud and abrasive and wanting to make people laugh. But the rest of the time, not so much. Maybe, I'm the youngest of 5 children, so I've got 4 elder siblings, and it's not like this is something that they intentionally placed upon me. They never said, quieten down, Sam, or whatever, at least as far as I can remember. But it's like maybe that's kind of internalized a bit, like that was my role in the family, was the younger one, the baby of the family, the quiet one. And yeah, I think growing up I was more of the, sit in the corner and stay quiet. Don't cause too much of a fuss.
Yeah. There's something also you mentioned about going red, blushing. And I had that. I still have it occasionally. I think it's become much less frequent. And I'm older than you, but it's become much less frequent. But I can remember starting my career in the civil service. And in like my 20s, early 30s, and even those moments where there's a meeting and you have to go around the table and just say your name and what department you're from, I would go bright red.
Same.
Oh, geez, man. It's kind of like, what is going on? And bright red, not just to a mild change in colour, but like a bloody beetroot.
Yeah.
Where I could actually feel the heat. People would go...
Yeah. Yeah. Or people would just say it like, oh, Sam, you're blushing. Like, you're blushing. You've gone so red. And you'd be like, oh, that just makes it worse, because now I'm going red about going red. Exactly.
And when you think about what that was, it was me saying my name and the department I worked in.
Yeah.
So it's amazing that we've ended up in this places where we are kind of putting ourselves out there professionally. And we're driven by wanting to support others, I guess. That's a value I didn't mention in part 1. Supporting others, making a difference for other people. I really see that in you. Is that one that you identify with? It
is, and I'm proud of that as well. That it feels like my, the moral compass or whatever has always been directed towards helping people, and not, for some reason, it was never towards make as much money as possible, get the nicest car, get the nicest house, go on the nicest holidays. It just wasn't. I'm not saying I don't know why, because my parents very much instilled that in me, my dad being in education, my mum being in kind of like social services and working for the government, and then doing other things later on in life. Talking of curious people, she went back and did a psychology A-level, then learned to be a personal trainer, now works in a college helping people with visual impairments and things. So definitely people around me instilled that as well, helping people. And that's definitely a value. Yeah, what worth are you putting out there into the world? And there was something else I was going to mention, and I've completely forgotten what it is just before that. I can't remember. Sorry.
No, but it'll probably pop back in.
It will, yeah.
But please do share it if it does. So let's get a bit practical. In what scenarios do you start to worry about what other people think of you? Can you think of any scenarios? You've mentioned a couple, actually, already. They're returning from a social event or a family meal and reflecting on what you've said. Any others?
Yeah, that is a big one, though. That is a big one. I can remember even talking to my friend the other day. It's funny the way I talk to some friends, because one way I talk to this particular friend is on Call of Duty. You know, we play online gaming, but that's our time, you know, once a week to have a 2-hour conversation, which we'd never do. I'd never pick up the phone to him for 2 hours, but it's like, because it's Call of Duty, we can just have a chat. But anyway, that's one thing I said. I was like, is it normal to walk away from a social situation going, did I say the right thing? Did I time that right? Should I have said that? Should I be more present? Did I check my phone too much? But anyway, that's one scenario for sure. But then others, you know, delivering training in a school. I've been the head of PE. I've been the head of science. So I've had to lead training. I've done other workshops, either in my capacity as a teacher or myself, you know, the breathwork, ice bath workshops. I've led exercise sessions. Lots of these things where it can come up and it can not come up as well. Some days I'm feeling really good and confident and it's not happening, but then other days it does. So it happens in a variety of scenarios like that. Sometimes when I press share on a social media post, sometimes when I share a video clip of myself and I'm like, could this be misconstrued or whatever? So there's loads of options. I think that's what I was about to mention. That awkwardness, like overcoming that awkwardness of putting something out there in the hope that it helps people. Like yes, this might be awkward, and yes, I might say the wrong thing, but my intentions are good, so I'm going to go for it. Do you know what I mean? So I think as long as you've got the right intentions behind what you're sharing, it's okay to have a bit of that cringe maybe behind it, because you're doing it for the right reasons. Yeah.
I have similar ones, I guess, about pressing publish on an episode when I've edited it and thought, oh, God, what did you say that for? Or, do you realise how much you say, or, or wow? And it's just, sometimes as I edit, I think, goodness me, are you really cut out for this podcast production and hosting? But then, like you, I think, well, this might be helpful to someone to listen to my guest and to how they're conceptualizing the approach to this problem in life or their specialism. So let's go for it, because that outweighs that sort of inner dialogue in my mind that is going, you're an imposter, you're an idiot, you're a fool type thing. Other things, like you say, social situations, training. But you're absolutely right. Some days I'm like, delivering a workshop to a group of leaders, for example, and I'm on it. And sometimes I actually look back on those and think, do you realise how senior those people were and how important they are? And you were holding that room for a day or sometimes 2 days. Blimey, could you do that tomorrow? And I just think, I'm not sure how I ever did that. So it depends on the circumstances and the context, I guess, we're in. And connecting to what matters to us in that situation. And you'll hear my language there. It's really taking me to ACT. And you know how my podcast is heavily infused with ACT. And I know you've come across it. But when did you first discover ACT, Sam?
I think it was kind of early podcast guests. I don't think it was before that. I think I knew I was interested in psychology and, you know, I'd heard certain terms. I'd heard about CBT and other things, but I can't remember when I first came across ACT, but I think it must have been when you came on the show, when Ray Owen came on the show, when Alison Maitland came on the show, and kind of, all these people that's their background and that's the way they frame things. And that's when I kind of, you know, all you and others, you all seem to just, every time I talk to you, you know, the conversation was framed in such a way that appealed to me and made sense. It was like, that resonates. That seems to be effective. That seems to be a good way to examine things. So let me find out more. And so I think I talked to you, you know, who should I get on the show? And I looked up other people, you know, connections, and who are these other people in this ACT space. So I'm by no means an expert and I don't understand all the lingo and everything, but I just like to think I can hold my own with psychologists and have these conversations, and any any that I do, I really enjoy the conversations and just the approach that they have to all these different aspects of life, because I've talked to Ray Owen about grief. I've talked to Alison about sports psychology and the way we approach events and races, and also the transfer from that to everyday life as well. And it's fascinating, and it just makes sense to me.
Yeah. I think I heartily agree that when I discovered ACT, it was at uni and going back to do a master's as a mature student, and a lecture with Paul Flaxman where he was describing the sort of basic principles of ACT, like moving towards what matters, relating differently to those thoughts, like what are people thinking of me? And it kind of liberated me and led me to reflect on life, thinking, well, partly in the early days, thinking, well, what could have been if I hadn't got in my own way so much? Yeah. But also then just practicing applying these tools to current situations. And I'm sure I'm doing things now that I wouldn't have done. I think I can safely say this, that I wouldn't have done without discovering the skills and the techniques from ACT. They've really supported me in moving towards what matters to me and exploring what matters. Because quite often I think in our careers, and I don't look at you in this way, but sometimes in our careers we're kind of on autopilot for a whole career. We get a job in, like, dare I say, the civil service. And don't get me wrong, in my civil service career I had a really great time. I did lots of different things, but it reached a point where I felt I'm not having the impact I would like to have. And that's not in a big-headed way. That's just one of those itches you talked about. Could I support people more effectively from the outside? And that was the conclusion I finally reached. It took a while.
It reminds me of one of my favourite questions to ask at the end of an episode to my guests, which is, what's the one thing you wish you'd have been taught as a child? And so often an answer kind of comes up that's related to everything that you've just mentioned. I wish I'd just lived my life more in tune with my values. I wish I'd learned to understand my thoughts better. I wish I'd learned to, I'm struggling for an example now, but, all that kind of thing. And then, what you say about kind of just going with the flow, it's just so easily done, isn't it, in the modern day, where we just go with the flow because we're just so busy. There's so much input, there's so much data coming in that we don't have any time to examine our thoughts and understand, well, why am I feeling stressed every time I come home from work? Why did I snap at that colleague? Why am I so tired? Why aren't I sleeping well? Because there's just so much input, there's so much busyness, there's so many people to take care of that we don't have any time. And one thing that I've in the past year I've been really interested in is, well, the work of James Hollis. I don't know if you've heard of James Hollis, who's kind of Jungian, isn't he? Yeah. And so he talks about, like, when these feelings come up and how, like, kind of like the midlife crisis and these things, and he comes at it like, I'm reading a book at the moment which is Under Saturn's Shadow, and so that's more talking about his approach to men and experiences of men at this point in life, where you've kind of got to a point where you go, oh, yeah, I don't think I've quite lived the life that I wanted to live, and maybe that explains why all of these feelings are coming up now. So I think I might have just kind of done a huge jump from where we were to this, but I just kind of think it all links. It's just interesting, and maybe people listening, other people can, might see this in themselves. Like, if you've got these things that are stirring up inside of you that you're like, well, why is that? And it's like, it's normal, it happens, and maybe it's worth being a bit curious about. This is what you and other people that I've had on the show have taught me. Like, be curious about that. Don't judge it. Don't ignore it. Don't suppress it. Like, what's going on there? What's that about? Because I felt that in the last year. It's been a year of, probably feeling my most anxious, my most low, my most kind of completely like rudderless. Like, what are you doing with your life, Sam? And I think it's, this stuff kind of comes up and you've got to, like, examine it and understand it. And then, of course, make a bit of a plan of action as well.
Yeah. And I think it is part of the process. We've spoken about this before, but when we are experiencing that sort of inner discomfort, we can either try to just ignore it and move away from it, keep going. Don't stop to reflect on that, because it's a little bit scary what might happen. But then stopping to explore it can leave us with quite a bit of head scratching and reflection. But it takes me back to what you said in part one, is just taking that action. So Let's think practically. What helps you get unstuck when you're having this thought about worrying about what others think about? What helps you get unstuck?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I'm glad you asked it. So one thing, I mean, if we're talking about the, like, I don't know, I've got something coming up, a workshop or a podcast, and I'm worried about what people think, like, am I doing the right thing, etc. One thing that really helps me for sure is just a bit of preparation. Like, I've definitely learnt in the past few years, a little bit of preparation can make me feel so much better. A little bit of kind of a rehearsal, a little bit of going over topics, a little bit of practicing what I'm going to say, which maybe before I would have thought, I don't need to do that, I'm just going to go for it. It's like, no, actually just a bit of rehearsal, go over it a few times can just help like quieten the mind and like help you relax just a little bit. What else helps me get untangled? Well, one thing that came up based on something you mentioned earlier, which I can't quite put my finger on now, what it is you said, but it made me think about like when you're worrying about a presentation or whatever it is you're doing, that like going back over past feedback and going back over like the messages that you've received or I don't know, a testimonial or something like that. I mean, a couple of people I've had on the podcast have talked about like a Big Me Up book. Well, Emma Draper, a dating coach, actually, she talked about this, a Big Me Up book, you know, in your low points, in your points where you're feeling like, I don't know, not motivated or like an imposter, like go back over your Big Me Up book. You've got all this evidence of when you performed really well. Oh, that was it. When I think you were mentioning about when you presented to all of those people, you know, all these senior people, and you go, wow, I just did that. And it's like spending some time with that feeling afterwards going, yeah, I just presented to that many people and it went well and they complimented me and I've got the feedback as well. So kind of gathering a load of evidence as well that then you can refer back to, I think is really useful too. Community as well, like friends, family. Like it's so easy to get caught up in your head when you're just alone and going over these problems that you've got or going over these thoughts over and over again, instead of just getting them out there into the world, talking to a colleague, talking to a friend, talking to someone in your family. I'm worried about this. I'm not sure what to do here. This happened. What do I do? Actually talking about it. Weeks and weeks have gone by in my life where I just kept things to myself and I didn't share it with anyone. And I look back and think, how much could I have minimized or completely eliminated the suffering I was going through by just saying, look, this was going on, because I'm sure they would have given me some advice. Get out of that relationship. Get out of that school, whatever it is, but instead just went with the flow, just carried on. So I think those are a couple of things, like a bit of preparation, your Big Me Up book, you know, gather evidence, gather feedback, talk to people as well. Those are things that I think have had an effect on me.
Lovely, because I think that really helps us bring it outside of our minds. Like you say, if it's just rattling around in there when we're ruminating about it, it gets bigger. In my experience. Yeah. And I think if we're talking about, we're also going back to that normalising, because I work in groups and individually with leaders, and these are highly skilled, really experienced, effective leaders, and they have doubts and concerns and thoughts that are less than helpful for them. And from the outside, you could never imagine that. So I think the more people understand this is part of what it's like to be human, and even I know leaders who I admire greatly, and they have learnt how to relate to their unhelpful mind in ways that are really healthy and effective, and not getting so derailed all the time by those thoughts. And I think it's always a work in progress, because the way you and me have been talking, I think it's like, oh, no, it's not that we're done. Oh, we've nailed this now. We're not bothered by those thoughts about worrying what other people think about, or anxiety about the terrible things that might happen in the future. Hell yes. Well, I certainly still get them, but more often I can relate to them in different ways to allow me to pursue what matters to me. Do you feel the same?
Absolutely. And as you say, it's a work in progress. But I think when you hit that realization, when you start to experience, oh, a thought is just a thought. And actually, just because the thoughts come up, you're useless. you can't do this. You should probably give up. Even though that thought has come up, maybe when 10 years ago it would have come up and I might have gone, yeah, okay, let's just forget it. Let's stop this. Now it's like, well, you have that thought come up and like, where's that come from? What's that about? Is this thought going to pass? It probably is, because this has happened before. I've told myself before, you can't do this, and then I did it. You told yourself before, you should probably quit. But then you carried on, and the thing that you were working on got even better, and it kept growing, and you kept improving. So you could have quit, but actually you kept going. And so, yeah, just that little separation is invaluable. And that might be that internal dialogue, talking to yourself, but it might be talking to someone else. It also could be just writing it down, couldn't it? Like, I feel like I should quit. I feel like I'm not good at this. Here are all the reasons why. And then you read it on paper and you're like, hold on, I'm not sure I quite believe that, actually. That doesn't seem right.
Yeah, all too often we buy into our own thoughts and treat them as 100% true or 100% worthy of our full attention. And you're right, ways to get that distance, writing it down, sharing it with a friend. It can help you change the impact of those thoughts. And like you say, absolutely, it's a work in progress. And Sam, there's an area of your life where you really, well, there are other areas, but there's one in particular recently I've noticed from your socials, is where you're really encapsulating the development of new habits. It's a poster, forgive me if I don't get this quite right, but you talk about, I lead a boring sort of life.
Yeah.
And let me go on to try and explain it, because you say you've got these routines. You're getting up at the same time. You've got these routines that support you and what you want to achieve in life and your well-being around fitness, around diet, around sleep. I wonder if you could just talk a bit more how you've developed those.
Yeah, sure. I guess it's just, and I say they're boring, isn't it? Because it's kind of compared to what your teenage or early 20s self would have thought is living an exciting and happy and wild life. It's like I'm doing all the opposite of that, basically. There's another funny post kind of related to this that I see, where it's kind of like, Grandma, you told me to go to bed early, drink lots of water and eat all your vegetables. Now I understand how right you were, kind of thing. I've kind of butchered that, but it's something along those lines. Just the boring, regular, routine stuff seems to have had the most impact on me. So, yeah, going to bed and waking up at the same time. Kind of limiting how much alcohol I drink now. I've done long periods without drinking it at all. Now I might have one or two beers, apart from at the Christmas party recently with my gym, and I had too much and I definitely paid for it. Like eating lots of whole foods, less processed foods. Wearing a sleep mask at night. I think, 10 years ago, if you'd have pictured myself with a sleep mask on, I would have laughed. But, it makes a difference. So all these seemingly simple, boring things actually just can help you feel more vibrant, more energetic, more present. But it goes against maybe what we're told is a good life and an exciting life. An exciting life has to be fueled by alcohol or worse. You have to be going out and staying up late to be having like an exciting and happy life. You have to be traveling all the time and taking wonderful pictures wherever it is with these amazing backdrops. And it's like, I've done that. I've done all of those amazing things. I've had like some really high highs, but then it feels like they're always balanced out with quite a low. And I feel like I'm at a point in life where I just want it to be steady. I enjoy this kind of quiet contentment. It's a real joy to be living like that, where you've just got your routines in place. You know who you are a little bit better. Sorry if I just hit the mic. That's just a more fun existence.
And it allows you to do more of what matters to you.
Yes, yeah.
It's kind of creating those conditions around you that allow you to wake up feeling invigorated and looking after your instrument.
Yes.
And role modelling for others how it can be.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Role modelling for others how it can be.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, and I think about that. I think about kind of my young nieces and nephews, and am I setting a good example for them? And I'd like to think so. Yeah, like these are the things that could be helping you feel a bit more healthy and happy. There is something I'd like to add to this, though, which kind of slightly goes against it, maybe, in that what I'm experiencing more now alongside these great habits that have done me so, served me so well, but also there's definitely been periods where I've been too attached to those habits. I've got to train today, and if I don't, I beat myself up. Or I then train and I overtrain, and then I don't feel great. Or I've got to wake up and I've got to meditate because that's my habit that I've put in place now. I've experienced where I'm kind of being dictated to by some of these habits. And I think we're seeing a bit of a revolution around this maybe on social media. Some of the people that I follow are getting a more kind of balanced view of put these habits in place and try them and experiment and see what effect they have on you. But also don't worry about if you miss a day or something goes wrong or you're out in and you're having a meal and there's a pudding brought out and you eat it. Don't beat yourself up, because the benefit that you had from enjoying that meal and that dessert with your friends or family far outweighs the health implications or whatever that it might have on you. So I think we just needs a bit of balance, because there's a lot of the kind of the disciplined bro types out there that are like, you've got to do this, wake up at 5 a.m, have an ice bath, do your meditation, do your breath work, then go out and train and lift weights. And if you're not, you're a loser. And it's like some people need that. They do, need to be kind of grabbed and kind of given a bit of shake and given some motivation and discipline and some boundaries. Absolutely, that's what some people are needing. Maybe a lot of young men are needing right now. But at the same time, it can go too far, perhaps. And people are just, kind of living their life dictated to by these habits, or these kind of gurus that they're looking up to. And that's just another form of kind of, self-affliction or something, or it's just another form of beating yourself up. It's another form of control. And so I think, we want to put these things in place, experiment, but you also need to be cautious and you need to adapt and be flexible. That's the same thing, isn't it? Be flexible.
Yeah. And that stance, I so agree, Sam, and that stance of, I would describe it as curiosity and kindness towards yourself. If you miss a day, or if you have a pudding, that's okay.
Yeah.
Because I absolutely agree that what you got from having that pudding in great company is wonderful. And it's not a reason to chastise or punish yourself or be critical of yourself and be harsh. You can be kind and reconnect with those habits, but also just keeping an eye on them so they don't become this rigid cage in which you then operate.
Yeah. It's like having a glass of wine as well. Sorry, it could be a dessert or it could be a glass of wine where you could be so kind of strict. No alcohol. I've heard that alcohol is really bad for me, so I'm just going to completely cut it out. And I've done, as I said, I've done months without alcohol, and it feels good and it's fine. But also just that one glass of wine with friends, I don't want to beat myself up about that, because Tim Ferriss calls it a social lubricant, or maybe that's just a phrase that is actually out there. It's not his phrase, but just that one glass of wine just helps you maybe relax and relate to your friends and family a little bit better, and you have just a bit more of a fun, rich conversation just because you've got that little bit of alcohol in your system.
Yeah. So Sam, you've spoken to many great guests. I wonder if there are 3 insights that you would share with our listeners that stick in your mind.
Well, I think this is very much linked to everything that we've just talked about, because I'm quite pleased with the quality and the integrity of the guests that I have come on the show. And I say that because all of them, as far as I'm aware, they come on and they're so professional. They're not trying to sell anything. They're just trying to give advice that they think helps people. And then you start to spot commonalities. And one of the commonalities that I see in all my guests is it's the simple things that make a difference. None of them are coming on and saying, you should get this app, you need to buy this thing, you need this special mattress or drink or whatever it is. Whether it's a sports psychologist or a dating coach or, I don't know, a nutritionist, it's the overlap in the advice it's the simple things that matter. Eating whole foods, sleep is important, so get sleep mask, sleep in the dark and a bit cooler room than your other rooms, Do exercise that you love. It's not like they're saying you should do this one specific workout. This is what's going to work. You're going to get abs and big biceps if you do this. Like, none of them are saying that. They're saying do what you enjoy and do what helps you move regularly, because that's what will have the most profound effect on your health and well-being. So I think the biggest insight is, it's just that the simple things make a difference. So, it takes a bit of time to unpick that and I don't know, reevaluate your relationship with some of the more complicated bits of advice that you've been told throughout your life around diet and around exercise and all that stuff. Yeah, unpick it and then try these just simple approaches, but do them consistently and give yourself time and see what effect that they have. I think that's one of the main insights. Yeah.
Wonderful. Any other insights from podcast guests?
I think another theme that comes through is some version of know thyself, isn't it? And this is common in psychology and religions. It feels like everyone's saying the same thing, like understand yourself. So again, if it's talking to a psychologist, if it's talking to a coach or a mental fitness coach or a doctor, or someone that's interested in longevity and happiness, it's like it all starts from that awareness of knowing your values, something we've talked a lot about. Knowing what matters to you, understanding the conversations that are going on in your mind and getting a grasp on those a bit better and dissecting them, being a bit curious about them. So that's one thing, know yourself. And then the other thing is definitely connection, community, something that I need to, need might not be the best word, but I should, or no, even that's not great, is it? I want to work on next year. Is connection, is being more open with people, being more connected to people, seeing people in real life more, because again, it's something that is recommended in so many different episodes from so many different experts in whatever their field, that if you want to exercise more, join a running club. If you want to improve your diet, talk to friends, get a recipe books, join a Facebook group where they're sharing healthy recipes. It's just so important, but also not just the advice that they're trying to give my listeners, but also the benefits that they're giving me as well. Like these guests are providing connection, they provide support for me, they provide inspiration, like off their own back they're keeping me motivated and sending me messages or commenting on posts saying this is great, keep it up. And so directly or indirectly, all these guests are reminding me of the importance of connection and community.
Thank you, Sam. So we've got that doing the simple stuff, we've got knowing ourselves, and we've got that connection. I love it. And I absolutely agree. I learn so much through my podcast guests as an individual. It's kind of like learning out loud. So, Sam, I'm going to bring us towards the close. I could continue talking to you for another couple of hours, but is there a workplace-related kind of takeaway that you'd share with our listeners, just to finish on today?
For sure. Now, this isn't based on any science, any studies. This is purely based on my own experience and, talking of lessons that we wish we'd have been taught, talking about looking back and thinking about how we could have acted differently. There are two ways in kind of the workplace that I would change how I acted in the past or what I'd done or my behaviour. And one of them is to not take myself so seriously. Just have more of a sense of humour about things and be more relaxed and not, every meeting doesn't have to be with a frown and, that I'm super serious. Like, you can have fun, even when you're dealing with really serious topics and outcomes and impacts that you want to have on children or other people or whatever it is. That doesn't have to get lost just because you're trying to create a warm, humorous environment where you're, sharing jokes and it's relaxed. And I don't know, I can't quite put my finger on it, but it's just don't take it so seriously. And, that one way that comes out with me and the way I've worked with children in the past, like you can make a maths lesson fun, even the most boring maths lesson, not by changing the presentation, the PowerPoint or the resources or whatever, But just by joking around and not treating it so seriously, like, this can just be fun. Whatever it is, this can be fun. So that's one. And then the other one is kind of almost the opposite to that in a way, but it's not put up with other people's, can I swear? I won't swear.
Yes.
But, okay. Well, I'll just, like, a mild crap. We'll just go with that. But not put up with other people's crap. That's what I look back on, and I wish that I had been more assertive, put boundaries in place better. And of course, this has to be done with care, professionalism, compassion, all of that stuff that we all know. But at the same time, there are so many people in the workplace that need to be called out on their nonsense, because there is bullying, there is unprofessionalism, there is inappropriate behaviour. I've been on the receiving end of all of those things, and I look back and think I should have been so much stronger, but I was so worried about rocking the boat. I was too embarrassed about making a fuss. I kind of almost wanted to protect the people that were not treating me well, which is just bizarre, isn't it? People that don't treat you well, but you're like, oh, they've probably got stuff going on in their own life, so I need to be really careful. And actually, I'm trying to get to a point now where I, like, firmly but compassionately say, this isn't okay, stop. But it's taken me until 37 years old to kind of get that message, and I wish I'd have, growing up, been more assertive, called people out more often.
Sam, thank you. Love that. I love that it's related to your own experience. And thank you for putting yourself out there. Thank you for coming on the show today. And thank you for role modelling and your constant learning. I'm really grateful for it and for what you do in the world. So thank you very much for coming on the show.
Oh, honestly, that means so much coming from you. It really, really does, Ross. I really appreciate it. And, talking about how little bits of motivation can keep you going, and some just provide you with a little bit more fuel than others, don't they? A simple message might provide me with 1 week's fuel, but what you've just said probably provides me with, like, the next 3 months. So I appreciate that, mate. Thank you.
Oh, and I mean it from the bottom of my heart. So thank you, Sam.
Cheers, man.
That's it, folks. Part 2 of my chat with Sam in the bag. And you'll find the show notes for this episode at peoplesoup.captivate.fm or wherever you get your podcasts. If you like this episode, we'd love it if you told us why. You can email at peoplesoup.pod@gmail.com. On the socials, there are some changes to our profiles. I've stopped posting on Twitter because I no longer value the place it has become. I've also retired my Facebook page as my confidence in the platform has diminished greatly. I'm still posting on Instagram at people.soup, and I'm on LinkedIn too, as well as a new account on Blue Sky. Just search for my name. Now more than ever, you can help me reach more people with the special People Soup ingredients, stuff that could be really useful for them. So please do share, subscribe, rate and review. Thanks to Andy Glenn for his spoon magic, and Alex Engelberg for his vocals. But most of all, dear listener, thanks to you. Look after yourselves, Pea Soupers, and bye for now.
Like, I'm loving it. I'm loving talking to you. I'm worried that I'm going off on tangents and babbling and talking too fast, but of course you always worry about that, don't you? But,
yeah. And for me, I'm just praying that all the tech is working and I'm not Helium Man or anything. But this is wonderful.